Market update and charts of the day. Fantastic to see you here. Hope you good. Hope your week's been a sensational one, and thank you very much for popping in today. And we'll do our usual headline search, and then, of course, we'll have a look at some charts and see what we can see in terms of potential setups and opportunities. Um, just as we start, of course, just remember that this is for educational purposes only. Please make sure you do your own due diligence on anything you see here. Make sure you follow trading plans. Make sure you manage risk on every trading action consistent with your own personal trading objectives and financial situation. Of course, this is for uh, general advice only. Nothing I say should be taken as personal advice. To take any action at all, that's your choice. And my job here is to give you some bullets to potentially fire once you've had a look and see if they're a fit. Let's get into some headlines, of course, for the day. And let's start with just a review of what happened last night. We saw US equities positive again across the board. And this is despite sort of ongoing tensions between the US and China from a trade point of view. A US government shutdown, which one wonders whether we potentially could hit a tipping point in the market accepting that this is the state of play for right now. It does concern me significantly. This is now turning into a significantly prolonged event. One thing that has kept markets relatively buoyant this week is, of course, earnings season, which ramped up this week. General positive vibe continues. We'll do an update scores on the doors on Monday when we get together. So if you want to pop along to that, that would be great to see you there, of course. US futures were trading pretty neutral to start the day after last night's positivity, but they have moved slightly to the upside, possibly a little bit of caution across the board as we do have some key data coming out tonight. Possibly Asian markets are mixed. The ASX is actually near neutral, not neutral, as I seem to have done there. Apologies for that typo. European futures are pointing to a cautious open this afternoon. Again, that possibly reflects to some degree the CPI data that's out later tonight. The US dollar index has looked buoyant recently, and it is holding that recent breach of a resistance level, so is sitting above that recent range break. Hasn't moved much in the last couple of days. We are seeing a bounce in gold. We had a fairly major pullback, and we've got a retracement now. Nice bounce. Retracement back over 4,100. We'll check out a chart in a moment. Copper is also looking strong, pushing against a key technical level. And we had a surge in oil this week on the back of some talks between the US and India in terms of whether India buys Russian oil or not, or the degree to which it does so. That oil surge has paused a little bit, but again, we're going to check out a chart in a moment. Bitcoin has bounced after testing the 200 MA. It's returned to that 112,000 level. And on the earnings and trade news being important, of course, we need to add to that some key data that's out today. That US CPI is expected this evening. It'll be an interesting take because, of course, we've been starved of key government orientated data over the last 3 weeks. So no non-farm payrolls, and of course, no weekly jobs and no CPI data. So that was due earlier in the week, was pushed back to Friday. Looks as though it's going to come out. On top of that, we've got some global PMI data, which will sort of indicate or perhaps give some insight into how trade has been affected by tariffs. So that's the news. Let's now look at what's happening from a hi to everybody, by the way, YouTube. Thank you very much for popping in and thank you for saying hello. Always appreciated. If you wouldn't mind just hitting a like, if you're not subscribed, and so you don't get notifications automatically, please feel free to do so. It'd be great to see you on a regular basis if you can make it along. But thank you all for being here. We're going to start on our rampage around the charts with the Dow futures. You can see there that we did hit record highs, and then pull back really for that sort of one day. And then we had that uptick yesterday. And as I said, futures are slightly positive today. If we put it on the short-term chart, this is where the US market closed. So we are slightly up on that. I think the key level to watch here is probably fairly obvious. At yesterday's sort of high closes, you got that forward reversal there. So close over that line there at 46,797. Let's call it 46,800. Nice round numbers, of course. You can see some consolidation here and here on the short-term charts. A possible move up to around about this 47 if we do break it. So possible 100. Sorry, try that again, mate. 46,800 up to 47,900. Yeah, so possibly 100 to 120 point move up potentially on the Dow. If we look at the Nasdaq, obviously we had some of the Dow components report this week, which is helping them higher. The Nasdaq again is up on the short-term chart. If we look at the daily chart, you can see record highs been, if we get a close above where we're trading now, that would be a record high on the Nasdaq futures contract. So that buoyancy seems to be there. PMI data and the CPI data is going to play into that a little bit. I might try and do a CPI session later, depending on how my day goes. I mentioned the US dollar is looking slightly stronger than it has been of late. Of course, we did see that significant strength at the beginning of October, this retracement, and then since then we've just sort of started to edge back up towards this, out of this key range here. But really, as I said, not doing a great deal over the last couple of days. We'll see where that goes. We had that major drop in gold earlier in the week with another potential major drop, but we managed to hold on to 4,000. The low of this was 4,005, so we bounced quite significantly off that, even within that bearish candle. Positive yesterday, sort of neutralish today at this stage, but looks as though the selling is done for right now. A reference copper has bounced again off that $5 level, sitting around about 510 at the moment, which looks like a key level. Possible move up to 522. If we look historically, when it has breached this, then that has happened on a few occasions. So we're looking for a breach, really. If you're interested in talking in looking at this in a short term, then we have got that 511.56 line we put on there, which represents yesterday's high. That's the level to watch. As I said, USO, USD, the WTI futures CFD is looking rather perky today. We've got a level of interest here. You can see it was support here back on the 11th on the daily chart, back on early August, sorry, through September, almost to the end of September when it actually breached. Now we've bounced back up fairly significantly. That V-shaped bounce taking us back up to 62. So that's a level just to keep an eye on. Possible move up to around about 65 on the daily chart short term. Again, we're just seeing a bit of flatness, but we've got yesterday's high as a landmark to the upside. But of course, there was a support here, which was sort of interesting in terms of it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 successive candles that tested that. We're now bound back down to test that level again. So this is worth keeping an eye on it for a short term trade, possibly down to retest mid 60s. So $60, $60.70, maybe a level. So there could be a short-term scalp on for those of you interested in that. But it really is a bit of a tipping point at the moment either way. Either we see the more buying come in or the selling start to come to profit take on this. What has been a good couple of days, which suggested a little bit of more profit taking maybe on the cards. But we have seen a retracement on a couple of occasions. Mentioned Bitcoin, sticky 112 level. So we got this double bottom type of formation now on the daily chart, which is technically important. You can see there, if I put it on a line chart. And of course, this is the 112 level that we've talked about time and time again. Has just been a level that there seems to be a migration to, irrespective of which direction Bitcoin goes. Let's just make that a different color so it's more standouty. If that indeed is a word. So you can see there the number of times prices consolidated around this. So it goes up, comes back down, tests it, goes up, comes back down, test it, goes down, comes back and tests it. So this appears to be a bit of a really important level. So a breach of that may see some more buying, but obviously at this stage, the jury's out as to whether we'll have enough momentum to take us back up here. The last couple of days have been positive, of course, with the bounce off that 200 MA, which technically is important. Some movement on the the movement on the US yen, which is really important as we're talking now. Um, if we put this on the daily chart, you can see the interest in this. Um, the only thing that would sort of stop me jumping up and down a lot about this is that level there at 153. That looks like a really important level. So even though we have breached yesterday's high on the in the last hour in Asia, I would say that 153 is probably the level to have on your radar, simply because of this price action here. Um, but really, if we look at what's going on, it's not necessarily with the GB pound USD. Looks like an unconvincing descending triangle there. A little bit of US dollar strength, but nothing earth shattering. So one would suggest that maybe, and you can see this as well in it's that US yen movement is primarily due to yen weakness rather than USD strength today, because we can see here on the GB pound yen a really key level in play. Again, upside on this may be limited due to previous price action on daily charts, but that's still a significant move to the upside. Around about 104 pips from where we're trading now. So we've got a really nice potential setup here. Should we breach 203.75, 204 will be a good point at which to trail stops, etc. If you are in this trade. So a couple of nice key technical landmarks to hang a trade on. Of course, from a management point of view, a nice logical stop placement there. So a really nice technical setup there on GB pound yen. That's going to be actually quite difficult to beat in terms of uh, a chart. We are seeing strength again in the Aussie yen. Again, you see us stuck in a range here. This key level here around about 99.52 was also resistance back here on around about 10 trading days ago. So this looks quite important for a possible move up to test 90 to test that round 100 level. So possibly about a 40 to 50 pip move upwards. That also looks quite attractive. And you can see, even if we bring this up a little bit, that we are testing the top of this range. If we look at our range finding tool, then that is pretty important. So I'm going to give you these two really as charts of the day, both alongside both anti-yen trades. So just be careful with your positioning if you're looking at both. So GB pound yen over 203.76. Um, Aussie yen over 99.55. With both of these, of course, make sure that you're patient, waiting for the correct setup to go to be in place, and of course make sure it fits your trading plan, and you put all the risk management tools in place once you're in the trade, if it is a fit for you. Moving to the ASX, we've been extolling the virtues of rare earths. If you missed the rare earths presentation on Wednesday, you can go and find it. The recording there is on YouTube. You can see there the bounce. We did suggest a bounce might be in play, and indeed we've seen that with Linus. Not particularly compelling today, but it looks as though there's enough evidence to hold that to the upside. Lithium stocks, the top three performers on the ASX today that we're seeing with the top 200 lithium stocks. Here is Liontown. We talked about this. This was chart of the day a couple of weeks ago. Let me just change that line there. There we go, just so it's clearer. So Liontown have breached that high. Trend continuation in play. We liked this when it breached $1. That was when it became a chart of the day. If we look back on a weekly chart, plenty of upside in this. We are actually testing the 200 MA on the weekly chart. Possible move in the first instance to around about 132. You can see the consolidated price action around that price point. So that's certainly worth keeping an eye on. See where it trades at the end of the day. Iluka, like LYC, is in this sort of range here. So we're going to put PLS on, uh, which we've been chatting about for a little while. This is probably the most, from a production point of view, this is probably the most robust in terms of an ASX component. One of the bigger players in the pure lithium space. You can see that move through $3 yesterday. Oh, sorry, up to $3 yesterday. I think the high was about 296. Let me just check. Yep, 296 was the high. Reached $3 towards the high of the session today. That's going to be so difficult to beat, and I don't think we will. To be honest, I think that is going to be our chart of the day. Let me just put a different chart on here. There we go. So let's just, I'm just creating another chart here so we can um, have a look at another couple. Mineral resources also pretty heavy um, on the lithium side of things as part of its portfolio. You can see there the move to the upside, testing 44.77, which looks again like a potential trend continuation trade. If we want to get out of the lithium space, then GYG having a good day at the office. Um, Nice bounce off this 2440 level. So it looks as though the buyers are back in. If you like this, if you like this diversification, possibly 2556 is a level to keep an eye on. Though that's not filling me full of massive enthusiasm. Wise Tech Global looks like a really nice rounded bottom formation in the tech space. Really not had a good um, second half of the year since July. We've seen this sort of drift to the downside, but maybe the institutions are saying, right, that's enough for now. We've got a nice potential move. Should it continue with this buying pressure, maybe up as far as this sort of 90.85 level, so around about 5% on that to keep an eye on. And one last one, we'll be talking about bounces off key levels. You can see Yanko. We liked this a couple of weeks ago when it was testing this, but it got a little bit belted. But since then, we've had a bounce move potentially back up to retest this high. Could be on the cards. Want to keep an eye on for next week, I would suspect. So China of the day, I'm going to plant my flag in PLS. If we look where it is from a weekly point of view, you can see also it's challenging this high that we hit back here in September last year. So the buyers most certainly back in. Stellar week, in fact, good run since mid-April. It looks as though this could ultimately, as a medium-term hold, maybe even challenge $4 again. But at this stage, a potential nice trend continuation trade to consider. Into the US, let's check out Nvidia. Obviously, as the days go by, Nvidia's just struggling a little bit on the back of that um, China-US trade talk, things where things are quite unclear. You can see it's in a really tight short-term range at around about this 182 as the top end, 179 at the bottom end. Looks very reminiscent of this over here before we got that drop off. But since this is subsequent to a move to the upside, it may be that there's a potential either way move on this um, to keep an eye on. Now we were jumping up and down about AMD the other day. Worthwhile looking at AMD. There's the chart. A really important price point for AMD, sitting at around about this 240 level. You can see the ascend classic textbook ascending triangle pattern that I've just drawn on there, where you get a level at the top, which is proven to be resistance, but higher lows to take us ever closer to a triangle point where the market will have to make a sentiment decision about what next. But 240 looks great. That's really worth keeping an eye on, I would suggest, um, in terms of one for your radar. Maybe one last one. I've taken a lot of the US stocks off here, but I don't like it. No. Okay. let's just check on a couple of sectors. If we look at Delta, and I wanted to look at CCL. Um, Delta reported well. Their reporting has long since departed. CCL are going to be interesting. They were on a stellar run, obviously in the early part of the year, sort of stuttered around this 32 after an amazing run to the upside, which more than doubled their share price. Um, again, you wonder whether this is the point, whether we're seeing some technical evidence of some institutional buying here. Didn't get the follow through here, but I actually quite like this fundamentally as a stock. Check on when it's due to report. Um, but I'll probably put 30.58 as a level to watch on this. If we look at Delta Airlines, again, suffered a little bit yesterday. Not a dissimilar story, really, in that the enthusiasm was earlier in the year. We're stuck in a range now. So, again, this sector remains unconvincing. I'll be possibly waiting until we move down, retest this 56 level before getting interested in this. And then, of course, we'll have a look at Tesla. Actually, we'll have a look at REMX. We talked about this on the rare earths session the other day. It does look as though it's trying to find a bottom, which would suggest it might be the case. So keep an eye on that possibly as an ETF. And then we have Tesla. So Tesla keeps on. If we look at Tesla, we're in a range here again. We found that support. We talked about that on Monday, I think. And the 420 looked like a nice level. We're now back up towards 450. Close above 460 would be an interesting price point. I'm going to make that the chart to watch tonight because it could move, um, providing that CPI data isn't scary, which it might be. So there you go. There is our chart for today. I hope that's been interesting and useful and all of that stuff. Oh my Lord. Um, yeah, we did. When I look on YouTube just to see how that's going, it's so delayed in terms of what I see. I had a dramatic thought that the charts weren't showing there. Um, but it looks as though all was good. Okay, so I hope that's been interesting, useful, giving you some things to think about. Most importantly, have a wonderful weekend with you and yours. Thank you very much for being part of the sessions this week. I look forward to seeing you again soon. We'll be back on Monday with a review of what CPI brought tonight and what the implications of that going forward. Any more Trumpisms, which there are likely to be, of course, lots going on at the moment with government shutdowns, etc., and trade talk. And what's happening in the Middle East and the Ukraine as well seems to be bubbling somewhat disturbingly. And of course, the latest scores on the Dawson earnings. So if you're around and about on Monday, it'd be great to see you here. It's usual time, usual place. In the meantime, take care, trade safe, and I'll love and leave you. Bye bye for now.